I'm Janet Johnson, and today I'll be talking about our paper titled UnMapped, Leveraging Experts' Situated Experiences to Ease Remote Guidance in Collaborative Mixed Reality. Collaborative mixed reality systems have been shown to be effective for physical tasks where the novice in the task environment receives spatial guidance from a remote collaborator with domain expertise. In our paper, we focus on designing interfaces for these remote experts that reap the benefits of a fully immersive experience while reducing the effort it takes to provide effective guidance. Today, immersing experts in a live 3D reconstruction of the task environment is often considered the gold standard, especially because it evokes a sense of being there. But this tends to be a computationally expensive design choice that makes it hard to cover large areas and can be hard to glean details from. Now, if we replace the live view with a static one, we could process it beforehand to have a better visual fidelity, which could lead to a higher sense of immersion. But this means that the expert gets no dynamic updates from the task environment. And while they do need to understand this full space, the different parts of a task environment can have varying communication and information needs. Most physical tasks have an active space where the bulk of the action that moves the task forward occurs, and it is here that experts need the most dynamic and detailed view so that they can reference different artifacts and communicate action that needs to be taken on them. But the rest of the environment, or the peripheral space, plays a crucial communicative role too, as it provides additional context and holds objects of interest like tools that are subsequently brought into the active space. Here, experts primarily need to acquire the spatial knowledge they need to direct novices' attention to these task-relevant objects. When it comes to support for referencing, prior work has shown that object tracking can be used to guide novices to objects of interest, and that these system-generated guidance cues allow experts to refer to task objects without fully knowing where in the environment they are. So at least for the peripheral space, we could combine a static 3D view with system-generated guidance cues that experts could initiate from their virtual environment. And for the active space, where experts really need dynamic updates, we can embed a live 3D view of just that region. But even a static view of the environment requires expending effort towards understanding it, and experts still need to perform a visual search to find the objects that they want to initiate system guidance for. Now, physical tasks are extremely embodied and situated activities, and domain experts typically have their own workspaces that they practice their craft in. These experts are known to structure or jig these workspaces to optimize it for themselves, and over time, they also develop extensive spatial memories in these environments. Now, the nice part about our design approach is that it has disconnected views for the two subspaces, and so we can modify one without impacting the other. And so instead of immersing experts in an interface that maps to the novice or the task environment that we call the mapped interface, we could swap out the view of the peripheral space with a static recreation of the expert's own workspace in an approach that we call UnMapped. This allows experts to work out of a familiar environment and leverage their pre-existing spatial memories to provide guidance. You can see that the live view of the active space remains the same and is embedded within the expert's workspace. Now, with a mapped approach, the expert's interface changes every time the novice environment does. But having to understand environments from a distance can be quite fatiguing. So if we're asking, say, a trauma surgeon to use these systems regularly in their practice, we should also be designing with repeated use in mind. With UnMapped, the interface, especially the peripheral space, is spatially stable, which means that it stays the same regardless of the novice's environment. And even if it isn't familiar in the beginning, experts can develop spatial memories over time, which would make repeated use of the system a lot easier. And so we wanted to study the impact of a familiar and spatially stable environment for experts and compare the effectiveness of both mapped and unmapped for single and repeated use using a 2x2 factorial experiment with 60 participants, where 20 expert bakers used a Quest 2 and helped 40 novices who were using a HoloLens to decorate a cake. The reason we chose cake decorating is that, like many other physical tasks, it has both an active and a peripheral space, and uses specialized tools and specific techniques that are non-trivial and require extensive practice to master. Experts used either mapped or unmapped as their interface, which was the between subjects factor. and worked with 2 novices in different environments across 2 sessions to study repeated use, and that was the within subjects factor. Both the mapped and the unmapped prototype included a live view of the active space, which was a 3D point cloud streamed from a Kinect in the novice's environment. And the static view of the peripheral space was created ahead of time using a Matterport camera. Experts could click on tools embedded within the peripheral space to initiate guidance for novices, and this also spawned a virtual replica of that tool for the expert. They could also click on cabinets to select objects within it, and moving the virtual replicas into the active task space shared it with the novice and could be used to demonstrate actions. For our study, we didn't implement live tracking and chose to use a Wizard of Oz technique for that instead. The mapped interface immersed experts in a static recreation of the novice's environment, and this is what that looked like in VR. The unmapped interface provided experts with a static recreation of their own workspace, and they could see a live view of the novice's active space, and their tools appeared where they would in their own kitchen. In terms of our results, we saw that being disconnected from the novice's environment didn't negatively impact the experience itself. We saw no differences in collaborators' spatial presence, social presence, or perceived guidance quality. Being immersed in a familiar and spatially stable space enhanced task performance, with collaborators finishing faster when experts used unmapped, and this effect increased with repeated use. It also reduced experts' task load without impacting the novices' task load in both sessions. Experts also mentioned feeling more calm when they used unmapped and reported higher levels of confidence and decreased stress. Having familiar objects in their peripheral view also helped experts, and in general, experts who used unmapped were more forgiving towards the imperfections of the 3D recreation. Now, a primary reason for this is that there was almost no visual search for task objects necessary when experts used unmapped, which meant they could make better use of the system guidance feature and used it more frequently, especially with repeated use. This then allowed experts who used unmapped to focus on the novice's active space, since they didn't need to pay as much attention to the peripheral space. Using unmapped also led to the communication between collaborators being more efficient, and experts specifically needed to use less verbose descriptions and could use more direct references. A more detailed report of the communication patterns is in the paper. The paper also has a more nuanced discussion of our results and its implications for practical use. But perhaps one of the more broader insights from our study was that when experts used the mapped interface, they compared it to being physically present in the task environment, and this always fell short. However, the experts immersed in their own workspaces felt that this was a whole new hybrid experience and seemed to enjoy it a lot more. And so, in facilitating a fundamentally different experience that allowed for rich communication without fully imitating physical proximity, the unmapped approach brings us a step closer to designing immersive interfaces that allow us to go beyond being there. Thank you.